Hi everybody, my name is Lori Lawless and I am an animal welfare advocate, especially of dogs, but I love all animals as well. I have been in the dog training community for about 15 years and here in Vermont since 2016. When I first moved here to Vermont, I actually came here, and at that time there were probably 20 to 30 dogs that were on the property. You'll see in this barn right here where the pigs are standing behind, there were kennels and crates in that. And then dogs were co-housed in yards. There was an area in the back, I'm not sure if it's still there, but there were dogs housed outside and there were cats in the basement. This is not what I would consider a sustainable place for long periods of time for animals to stay. And I'm basing this off of my 15 years working in shelters and across the country. I've done work with the ASPCA and the HSUS, and I have actually helped rehabilitate dogs from overcrowded situations in which rescuers trying to do the right thing have accumulated too many animals to properly take care of. In 2019, there were 52 dogs on this property, so the likelihood of there being more than that at this point is pretty high. I think that they do a good job of trying to keep the animals quiet and under wraps, but I do know that there's many dogs on this property in addition to other animals, including the 2 pigs out front here. So this is Heidis Haven Rescue, and we are less than 9 miles from the state capitol and our state house, which includes all of our legislators who probably drive by this town on their way to work every day, and yet nobody has done anything about this. Heidis Haven moved here from Ferrisburgh, Vermont. So in 2018, the town came down on the owner of the rescue, Sheila McGregor, because she had 32 animals in a house. Now at that time, what happened between having all the animals and what happens in these situations is they have to store food. And when you don't have a secure place to store food, that's where you start getting mice, and eventually rats will move on in. So in Ferrisburgh, Sheila and Heidis Haven Rescue Organization actually had rat tunnels being dug underneath the household. And at that time, the town started taking action to classify her as a business and use zoning laws to push her out. Around that time in 2018, having the animal sheltering experience I did reach out to Sheila to let her know it's not normal for rats to be infestating her property. And if that's the case, the capacity for care is too much for you to handle. And she became argumentative with me and told me it's totally normal because there was a field across the street for rats to be at her household. The thing with Sheila, and the thing that I've seen with her, especially online, she's very well known in our dog community, is that when you talk to her, she sounds very reasonable. She actually will say things that I would agree with. She talks about force-free training and holistic pet care. But when you look at the reality of the situation, that's not what's actually happening. So in 2019, after she got kicked out, or the rescue organization was kicked out of Ferrisburgh, Sam sold her the property here in Williamstown. Less than a year later, so in 2019, the select board of Williamstown's former health officer had some pretty big safety and health concerns due to the amount of animals that were on the property and the lack of people here to take care of them. He brought these concerns to the select board, who decided to do nothing and said they had no actual complaints from residents. Over that whole situation, which also eventually included a dead dog on the property, there's a bull terrier here that starved to death. So he ended up quitting his role, and at that time, quoted from an WCAX article, he said, "Most of the dogs are kept in plastic crates or metal kennels that don't meet statutory regulations." So I would like to just talk a little bit about the animal care standard. Most animal shelters follow a Association of Shelter Veterinarians guideline for shelter care. So this is a national standard. These guidelines, in which again most shelters follow, is every animal on the property should be getting at least 15 minutes minimum per day for their daily care. So this doesn't include cuddle time, this doesn't include walks, this includes nothing else but 15 minutes for their enclosure to be cleaned and they get fed. So if a shelter has 30 animals, That's 7.5 hours a day of one person's time in just cleaning and animal care. So if you had somebody there 7 days a week, it's actually 1.3 full-time staff members. Theoretically, these could be volunteers, but I will tell you it's very hard to get full-time volunteers because, you know, people have to work for a living. If you have 60 animals in the property, it's 15 hours a day of just doing minimal baseline daily care. So for a 7-day week, which obviously animal care requires 7 days, that's 2.6 full-time people. And for an 80 animal sheltering operation, you're looking at 20 hours a day of just daily care. So that's 3.5 full-time staff members. So as far as I know, from what I've been able to gather online and looking through tax records, I don't think that Heidis Haven has any employees. And the more and more people come down on Sheila and the Heidis Haven operation, the less open she is about what she has going on the property. Again, she gets very defensive about what's going on there and has refused to accept help from every single person who has reached out to her, and also is not making any moves to stop taking animals into the state. Most of these animals are coming up to Vermont from out of state, which means they're coming up with potential diseases, which usually means you need to have quarantine spaces. For example, in Massachusetts, any animals coming into the state have to be quarantined for 48 hours, and they have to come in with a health certificate, and they have to be seen by a veterinarian at the end of that 48-hour window to get a clean bill of health. I want you all to know that Vermont has absolutely no regulatory agency. So animals can be coming up with parvovirus, they can be coming up with heartworm disease, they can be coming up with hookworms, they can be coming up with ringworm, and other states in the Northeast have started to regulate this, and Vermont has done nothing. I think would surprise a lot of people. For being such a dog-friendly state, we don't have a centralized animal control, and oftentimes animal cruelty complaints either go to the state troopers, and now I've heard that they've passed it off to game wardens. The biggest pushback of information that I've gotten is the town and officials are conflicted about doing anything about this property, because if they go in and there are 80 animals, they don't know what's going to happen because we don't have any regulatory agency to then therefore care for 80 plus animals. So the fear of not knowing what to do with the animals coming off the property is preventing folks from moving forward, but also the lack of anybody wanting to step up and actually take responsibility for this issue, both in the town of Williamstown and also in the state of Vermont. So I just want to make it clear that this is not just a one-time issue. There are likely other places like this in Vermont. This is one of the most well-known, but this is a statewide issue and not just a Heidis Haven issue. Technically, she's not doing anything illegal, and the only way to see if anything illegal is really happening on this property is if you were to go in and find animals without food, water, or shelter, which I'm sure she currently has, but yet the food, water, or shelter stuff that's being provided is probably not as adequate as you would see at a normal shelter. And unless an animal is being abused or an animal died on the property and somebody actually investigates that, documents the evidence, and brings it to court, nothing is going to happen here. So we really need to push our officials to get on this property with regular inspections and a probationary period so they can do some evidence collecting and or get Sheila to reduce her animals or clean up her act a little bit. So the more that our officials hear from you guys, the more that this is potentially going to get resolved. Call your politicians, call your select board, come stand outside of this road with me. It's town property to be on this road, and we can sit here and put the pressure on this organization for them to reduce their numbers or shut down. Please join me in this fight. Please join me in standing up for these animals. I really want someone to be held accountable for the animals that are suffering on this property. Let's contact the police and contact the game wardens who the state police have passed this off to, and somebody needs to hold this shit accountable. So I'm gonna go ahead and take some shots from the road. Thank you.